Miniature soldiers, big opinions. This is the Conclave Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Conclave Podcast. Welcome to our smelliest podcast yet. We are absolutely blessed to have a copy of the Death Guard rules amongst us. But before we get to that, let's go through the team. I'm joined today by Rich. How are you today, Rich?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Ed?
I'm good. The legal department, how are you?
I'm alright, mate. How you doing?
I'm good. Mr. Quipster?
I am fantastic as always.
Fantastic. And the man who has brought the Heavenly Tome to us is Mr. Liam Dempsey. How are you today, Liam?
This is nice. I like this. Very professional. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I've already said this before, right before we start. This is strange because I'm not used to being the one that's not leading.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I did mess it up already.
Makes me uncomfortable.
I was supposed to call him Reza because we do nicknames, but I literally just read the screen. That's how slow my brain is. That I couldn't figure that out.
So it wasn't professional. I take that back.
I don't mind you calling me Rich because it's better than BDR.
Oh no, BDR is the one. Like, Liam, did I tell you what BDR stands for?
No, but now I want to know.
Okay, so basically, we were playing Call of Duty with Winters once, and Rich rocks up.
Name drop.
And just, oh yeah, totally. So Rich rocks up. His first game he's ever played with Winters, and he just starts absolutely smashing people. Yeah, that's how Rich got the nickname Big Dick Rich, because he was just swinging it all over Call of Duty.
Wow. Well, that's enough about Rich. And on to Liam. You're obviously very close with Quipster on DZTV. But so what kind of things have you got planned this year?
There's tons, man. There's so much planned. It's unbelievable. Some of it I can't talk about, but I'll sort of drop some hints anyway. But we're making kind of big moves in the on-demand content scene, hopefully this year. So we've got some really exciting things coming for the channel. 2020 was a shockingly... Can you swear on this podcast? Is that fine?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can swear.
No, you fucking can't. Jesus.
Okay, perfect. 2020 was... I'm just conscious, right? 2020 was a shit year for everybody, and it was really tough to kick out content, specifically because before a recent change, what we predominantly covered was pretty much battle reports all the time. And obviously, battle reports require people to be in your house filming, and we can't do that right now. Well, not as much as we would like because of the COVID situation. So we've sort of had to kind of adapt a little bit and change the way we produce content. And now we've got... I actually think this is better. So now, instead of just kicking out 2 battle reports a week, every week, there's a whole raft of content coming out. We've got people doing blogs and vlogs. I've started a new sit and talk series because that's kind of how I started on YouTube, and it's pretty much my happy place. Alex has started a sort of interview chat type series. There's loads of stuff coming. And we've made a sort of business decision, I suppose, to change our model as a website. This is like exclusive stuff as well, by the way.
Wow.
Well, Alex knows.
I know.
This is like exclusive stuff. I won't give too much away, but
It's so cool.
I think the model, the sort of on-demand 40k model so far has pretty much been copied, I think, throughout almost every channel that's tried it. Maybe even every channel. And the premise behind it is we kick out free content on a platform, normally YouTube, and then we then charge you for on-demand content behind a paywall on a bespoke website that's for more content.
You know it, you love it.
Absolutely. It's the model that's worked for everyone. Mini Wargaming sort of made it famous. Tabletop Tactics have done an excellent job, and we've got other channels moving into that same market, people like Hellstorm Wargaming, etc. And what we're ending up seeing is loads and loads of channels that have their on-demand content behind a paywall. And I think it's amazing that these channels can do this stuff for a sort of income, and some of them are now doing it full-time as well. But Alex will tell you, I'm not someone who likes to follow trends. I don't like doing that. So DZTV in 2021 is making a bit of a hard left turn, and instead of just being a channel that exclusively produces content from me and Winters, we are now looking at commissioning other channels in the content world for 40k and potentially other gaming systems as well to produce content for us under contract, and then we put that up in deployment zone as well.
Wow.
So we have signed a deal already with a company and it's a big company. I can't say any more than that right now.
I know who it is.
Is it Games Workshop?
No, we like professional content.
When you see
Bye sponsorship.
No more books for you.
Honestly though, when you guys see who it is, you'll be like, holy shit.
And Quipster, you've kept this to yourself.
Yeah.
You've lied to me.
It's been really hard.
Yeah, well done.
You've lied to me. That's outrageous. Wow.
That sounds really cool though. That sounds amazing.
I'm going to need a minute.
So my sort of goal, I suppose, now with 2020, not 2020, but with DZTV in 2021 and then further on, is to change the model. And instead of just being a channel where we produce our own content, the phrase I've sort of coined is that we want to be the Netflix of the gaming world, the Netflix of 40k and gaming content. So you have multiple channels, and what we can do then is we can also do things like we can scout things like YouTube. We can see up and coming new young channels who are doing well and gaining that momentum, and before they make that choice to go solo to try and make an income and turn some revenue, we can maybe grab them early and go, look, we want to bring you on board, and here's what we're going to pay you for a series of videos, and you can put your content, and basically you can monetize your content on our platform, and you're going to make a shit ton more than you will with Google ad revenue, because Google ad revenue is a pittance. I think it works out something like every ad that's watched on your channel is worth something like 0.01 cents, if I remember rightly, or something like 0.02 cents per ad. It's nothing. Yeah. So if we were then offering someone X amount of pounds per video, instead of the £2.50 they might make from Google AdSense, I'd like to think that they're probably more inclined to go, actually, I'm monetizing a lot quicker with this platform, and I'm going to put my content on there instead of behind my own paywall, which in itself comes with its own costs, and you've got like hosting costs and server space and all that kind of stuff. So that's the plan for the channel. More content from us that is varied, and additional content from other channels as well. That's the big plans for this year. As
someone that is obviously outside DZTV, it makes the channel really, really enticing, because I'm going to get such a variety if I go there. Just like you say, Netflix is a good analogy.
And you guys already have. I mean, I'm a subscriber. You guys already have one of the things that attracts, I think, a lot of people to DZTV. You guys already have, as far as 40k goes, a fairly varied model anyway. Like a lot of the narrative stuff with, obviously Winter's, well known for his narrative side. The more competitive stuff as well that you do. The like Winter's bits, hobby vlogs from Sultan. Like there's already a wide range of stuff on there, and I think it's interesting that other channels have started to do more of that when you guys have already sort of got it established. So it's interesting to see how that develops, and this can only be like another sort of bit of growth on that, which is brilliant. Yeah, I wish you all the success in the world.
It's always interesting when people say that sort of stuff, because I think Alex has come to me a number of times and said, look at what these channels are doing. They're clearly doing it because you are. And I always think to myself, from my very humble beginnings of 3 subscribers and sat in my living room with a terrible background and a shocking camera, and I always think, there's no way they're copying what we're doing. Like, there's no way that, I know, I can see your background, it's beautiful. There's no way that they're copying what we're doing. Surely that's not possible. Surely some of these bigger channels, the channels that I watched before I even started putting content on YouTube, surely they're not following our model. And as time's gone on, and I know how much I keep an eye on what they're doing as well, and it's a competitive market, right? And there is a degree of, we want to attract people's custom to our site if they're only going to pay for one subscription instead of to someone else's site, like people like Tabletop Tactics. And when you look at Lawrence and his team, who kick out incredible content every week, and they've got a raft of people now on the books, and they've got studio, it's really hard to compete with that if you just do the same as they're doing. In fact, I'd go as far as to say it's almost impossible, and the only thing anyone is ever going to have over them is potentially personalities that people like more, or people that are able to engage with more than that channel, because at the moment they're just leagues ahead when you talk about production quality, when you talk about the type of content and how regular it is, their whole setup. It's just, you can't keep up with that. So it doesn't make sense, or it didn't make sense for us to try and directly compete with them. And we wanted to move into a space that was more focused on, for me, the favourite part of the whole hobby, and that is the community. And when people like Sultan are doing his hobby vlogs, and people like Alex are putting his videos on, and other people are doing army showcases and stuff, they're people that aren't strictly, they're not strictly channel people in terms of, they're not on our payroll, they're not salaried by us, they don't get anything out of it apart from the gratification of doing it at the moment. I mean, that may change in the future, but they're literally just people of the community that have come to us over the course of the last 2 or 3 years and said, hey, I want to do... Sultan quite literally just messaged Winters and say, I want to start doing a vlog. And Winters came to me and said, I've got a person who wants to put some videos on the website. This was last year, and I said, we were in the height of COVID, and I said, fuck no, I don't trust anybody else's content.
I remember
and
that.
That was and Winters like, I think you should watch it. Nope, not happening. But that was me. I'm such a crazy control freak about content quality and how things look, and I'm really fussy about it, and it's why it's been a really painful journey working with Winters. But
it's the phone thing that gets me.
But so I said no straight away, and I watched Sam's video, the first one that he did, and actually chuckled to it and thought, I'm enjoying this. And it isn't like Sam won't hold anything against me for saying that it isn't like 100% top production value. It's not something that you would see out of a YouTuber with 10 million subscribers, but then actually it's a really real feel to it, and people I think can really relate to what he's doing. And I think that was sort of a big click for me about actually our focus shouldn't be look at us and what we're doing. Our focus should be we are part of this community, and let's show off what everybody's doing.
On Winters as well, because I do have concerns, because I saw the underside of his table in one of his most recent videos where he was showing and has anybody died from that, or at least got tetanus? Has anyone at least got tetanus from it? Like, this is
he made a statement on that video from that bolt that he said no one's ever hurt themselves on that bolt, and I can categorically say he's a lying fuck.
It's a world exclusive, ladies and gentlemen.
I have definitely caught my leg
Can I
on
ask
that.
a question? You mentioned about like expanding the kind of maybe the gaming systems you were talking about. Is it all tabletop focused, or are you looking at other systems as like a whole, like video games? Or
That's actually a really interesting question, and something that we started to discuss recently. And my initial focus was going to be solely tabletop games. We're very lucky that we have a sponsorship with Element Games, who are phenomenal. And what we get access to with Element actually is their sales figures as well. And they can show us statistically what is doing well in terms of sales and what isn't doing well in terms of sales. And so we know, for example, that 40k outsells every product on the market. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And it even outsells Age of Sigmar by a factor of 3 to 1.3. I think it was 1.3. No, it's 1.3 because it's more than twice as much it sells Sigmar. So that's the top 2 selling products for the Element website. You then have to go down to number 21 on the list to find any other gaming system as selling, and that's below Vallejo products and airbrushes and paintbrushes, and they just don't sell. And I sort of question what is the point in moving into a market and put a load of time, effort, maybe even money, because we would probably be commissioning other channels to do things like Bolt Action or Star Wars Armada or systems like that. Do we really want to invest that money there, knowing that we're probably going to have a diminishing return? We're almost definitely not going to see an influx of the channel we've signed, who are going to go live on deploymentzone.tv in March, will bring us new customers. There is no if, buts, ands, or maybes. They will bring us new customers. I can guarantee it. And I wonder, or I tend to be responsible for managing the whole business, and I tend to look at something like Star Wars and think, if we were to invest X, so let's say we were to invest £10,000 on a series of videos for that particular gaming system, would we see a return at Deployment Zone? Because ultimately we want to be able to grow, and we want to grow not only to line my pockets, obviously, but because we want to be able to start paying even more people to come and do their hobby full time and put their content online. So we develop this Netflix of content, right? So everyone can go to DZ and go, actually, I want to watch some Age of Sigmar, or I want to watch a painting tutorial, or I want to check out the rules for the latest Death Guard Codex, whatever it might be. And I don't want to, in the early stages, expand to those systems that aren't going to give us that return. Distant future, absolutely, because we'll be Netflix, right? So we could put anything on there. However, I have then looked at the gaming market, and that's a flipped sort of coin, whereby if you do it well, gaming content sells, even on YouTube, right? People do it full time on YouTube. So there's definitely the potential to cover maybe things like Call of Duty or the latest Battlefield game or whatever on DZ. Maybe we could put gaming content on there. The problem we have with that one is we have a market then in the YouTube world that's incredibly, and Twitch, that's incredibly saturated, and it's really hard to make that noise. So would I like to cover both gaming systems that aren't very popular and video games? Absolutely. Will it happen soon? It doesn't make sense to happen anytime in the near future, because we just won't see a return on it, and it's an investment that's just not worth it at this point.
So, talking about you essentially running all the behind the scenes stuff, all the like business end of DZTV, like how did that relationship between you and Winters evolve in like the first place?
How do we get to start in the business right from the very beginning?
Yeah,
is that what you're asking? Okay, this is an interesting stuff.
And how did you get into the hobby? Actually, just if we're going back further, out of curiosity.
So the hobby is an odd thing for me. I was aged 11 or 12, and my nana worked in a charity shop, and she gave me an old metal corn bloodthirster that was donated to the shop. And
now.
I'd never done this sort of thing before. My old man, my dad used to do like model aircraft, like World War II model aircraft. So it was something similar to what my dad had done. I thought, I'll give it a go. The next thing, we were in my local games workshop in Southampton, and I think my brother and I both had purchased for us by my wonderful mother a box of the old Space Marines. It's so bad I don't even know what edition it was. And a Rhino, I think it was. And we put them together and did a bit of painting badly because we were sort of like 12. And then friends of mine at school, they played to a point where they had like what would currently be seen as a ton of hobby stuff. So we were there, and this guy was teaching us the rules, and I later found out that they weren't the rules, they were his rules. And it was equivalent basically to playing an expensive person's plastic toy soldiers, those little green things that you get. But as a 12-year-old boy with super space like marine things, that's cool, right? We loved it.
No doubt.
College years, it kind of went quiet. I discovered beer, women, rugby. Like, there was no hobby for me for ages. So people like Winters who say they did it the whole way through, yeah, I stopped. Definitely stopped. And I picked it back up again. So I joined the forces when I was 18, and I joined the army. And I did 2 years worth of training to train on Apache attack helicopters. I got posted up to a place called Wattisham in Ipswich, which is, from my home, it's sort of 3 to 4 hours drive. So it's not one of those sort of journeys you wanted to do every weekend. And the first or second weekend on base, what I found was that it's deserted. No one stayed. Everybody just disappeared. So I went into the local town, and there was a games workshop, and I haven't been one of these for a very long time. So I sort of wandered in, and then it was like, hook, there you go. We're straight back into this, because I could sit on camp at weekends with my models, just in peace, doing some hobbying. And that's when the real passion started to kick in. And I even found out that there was a gaming club on site, and they would regularly meet up and play 40k. And I started to learn the rules. And then there was events. There's a shop in Colchester called 40k, which we've been to for events before as a channel. And they were doing tournaments and stuff. So I started doing the tournament scene. And in early days, I was more into competitive 40k than anything else. I'm a super competitive person in everything, like everything. And I really hate being shit. So I really hit competitive hard early days, and I'll be honest with you, the narrative stuff, I've always loved the narrative. I've always known the sort of backstory to the Horus Heresy. I've always been reading fluffing codexes. I don't know it as well as Winters does. I love it, but I don't know it, and I love it for a different reason to him. So both him and Alex are really keen on canon and lore, and this is what we know from the stories, and I'm a different narrative player. I'm a fuck what we know. What can I create? What space can I be in? What can my army do? What narrative can I tell? I don't want to fit into the canon. I want to make my own sort of story and forge my own narrative. So I'd always loved that, but I was hardcore competitive, and it was only when I was starting to create something on YouTube, which happened in 2017, with the birth of my second born, and I was taking the late shift whilst my wife got some sleep. Because we had an elder kid already, and we had my second born. We was up till fucking 3, crying and shitting and wanting food. So I just thought, well, I'm sat here doing nothing. I might as well start recording, and that's how I started YouTube. And originally, the initial focus was to be sort of on rules, on competitiveness, on what's effective and what's good. Because I saw what people were doing, and my competitive nature thought, I can do that better than other people. And whether that's true or not, who knows? I always think I can, so I'm going to give it a go. And that's how I met a guy called John Stewart, who ran a channel called Visicast, who's based on the South Coast, and he owns a video production company, incredible production value. Again, liked tournaments, very much my kind of 40k player. So I started filming battle reports on his channel and doing sit and talks on mine. And he then had a booking with Winters to film, and I was supposed to go and hang out with him for the day, and I couldn't. So I messaged Winters and said, I can't make it. I'm so sorry. I can't come. I would love to have hung out. Maybe we'll do something. And he went, how about we come and film for your channel? And I was blown away and didn't even know he knew I had a channel. And that was it. It wasn't too long before we were sat down doing the more Winters Sit and Talk series. And that's how that relationship started, right from 12, getting my first model, all the way up to meeting Winters, basically. Winters being hardcore narrative, that was then what sort of swayed me more towards, I think there's more value in this kind of content. Because I think there's tons of people that you guys you must watch loads of content yourself. I think there's tons of guys doing competitive content.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's loads of people, and I think there's loads of people that I am a competitive person, but I will openly admit I'm not very good at competitive 40k. Like, I'd like to be better. People like Stephen at Vanguard Tactics, people at the Tabletop Tactics guys, some of the other channels, they just do it better than me. And sometimes you have to accept the fact that people do it better than you. And so I stopped and went hardcore down the narrative route. And so far, touch wood, it's doing quite well. But there's still a focus on rules and such as well.
Yeah, of course it matters, or else people will spend their time correcting you on YouTube. That's all those people full-time jobs at it, you know?
But no one does that because everybody's got something better to do.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Not during COVID.
I mean, that's actually an interesting question. Like, when you first started getting that kind of criticism online for, like, maybe a little rules mistake or something, like, how do you deal with that in the beginning?
Respond in capitals is the best advice.
For me, YouTube is the devil. Like, I love it and I hate it at the same time. This is a really good question. My gut instinct, the type of person that I am, 10 years in the military, when someone gives me that kind of abuse on YouTube, my instant reaction is not something that as a channel you're ever going to want to post, because it will never be seen as a positive engagement. It just won't, and it will only ever harm you later on. That was a real hard challenge for me, because I wanted to fight these trolls, fire with fire. I can be a horrible person if I really want to be, and that's what I wanted to do. Like, that's my natural gut instinct, is
what
to do that.
What position did you play in rugby, by the way?
To tell them.
I just want to just.
I played 8 until the age of about 20, 22, and then I played 4 or 5.
Okay. Just this conversation, the way you're talking about it resonates with me. Although I'm a wing, so I don't get in much into the fighting, but I can see the way you react. It makes sense to me.
Like a rugby player, but less muscle. So yeah, I 10 years military and also played rugby since the age of about 11, I think, as well. So that doesn't help. There's a level of like, there's a level of laddish culture that exists in both of those sort of circles, right?
Very much so.
Some of us would like to say nowadays that it doesn't happen so much, and it kind of does still. And maybe it's not right, but it does exist, and you kind of have to. You kind of have to be a bit robust in those situations to be able to survive to a point, right? And I think most people that are part of a rugby team or are in the forces would say that that's probably still the case. Whether it should or shouldn't be in 2021, that's a whole different conversation, but it probably is still the case. Sure. And part of my sort of defense mechanism there would be to give better than I got. So if I got abused, I would give, apart from my uncle, if I got abused, I would give as bad back as they'd chucked at me in the first place, right? But you can't do that on YouTube. And I found, to start with, the advice that I got, so the mentor I had has been Winters. So when I started producing videos and he started doing videos with me, for some reason he seemed to think I was sort of decent at it. So he introduced me to a sponsor who wasn't Element at the time. And I won't badmouth the sponsor, but the sponsor had a plan to basically create the Netflix of 40k content, and it never happened. And then he broke his relationship with Games Workshop, and we were looking at it as channels. And Winters and I said, there's no point being sponsored by them if they're not doing 40k. It doesn't sort of fit our channel now, because we're solely focused on 40k. And that's why we went across to Element, and we then decided we were going to do what he wanted to do, but we're actually going to make it happen and do it ourselves. And that's how that whole relationship started, Alex, where he was like, Winters was like, I've got a big audience and I can do content. And I was like, great, I've got no audience, but I love tech and I love managing stuff. So I'll do that part and you do the content part. And we've got basically a perfect relationship. But up until that point, part of the process was Winters sort of coaching me and mentoring me on things like YouTube. And I will openly... So I think I'm really qualified to talk about YouTube, because I personally believe I've made a ton of mistakes. I'll be open and say I've made loads of mistakes on my YouTube channel, and I'm still learning.
I'm looking at one right now.
yeah. Massive mistake, yeah. But one of those mistakes, I think, was in the early stages, was just not responding to comment at all. And I say that, right, people are going to sit there and go, no, that's the right thing to do. You shouldn't... And if you can do that and you can cope with doing that, if you can cope with saying nothing, absolutely it's the best course of action. But if that then starts to genuinely negatively affect you as a person, I then question if it is the right overall decision to stay quiet. I don't necessarily think that you should go and hit them as hard as you can with the most abusive comment you could throw back, but maybe some kind of engagement. And what I started to do actually was engage with these people, but in a really like genuine... Like, why have you said that? Why have you behaved that way? Why have you... Do you know what I mean? Like, instead of going, fuck off, dickhead, I'm not interested, go and watch striking Scorpion, I don't care. I would say, look, I don't like. Why is this your response? And
what did Rich say?
I would never insult Liam.
There's nothing but heart emojis from Rich. I'll be honest.
That's literally true. The other
and
day.
eggplants.
Yeah, eggplants.
Yeah, all the eggplants. But you do normally find that, I think more often than not, if those people are sort of called on it but in a polite way, most of them who are sat there in their pants with crisps on their chest behind the keyboard will actually probably back down and go, yeah, all right, well, it was maybe a bit unjustified.
You know, I actually saw that once. I saw that once in a Facebook group. Someone was bad-mouthing Stephen Box, and he replied, and I think someone said, like, oh, Stephen Box goes to a tournament and gives it all that because he like came second once. And Stephen Box replied to him and like wrote this essay. It was very polite, very to the point, and just categorized like, well, actually, you know, this is what I do. This is the things I've done. Immediate reply from the next guy. Oh yeah, sorry about that.
Do you still find you get that a lot? Like, was there a point where you had it happening to you a lot, but since the coaching and mentoring, it's happening less, or?
I wouldn't say. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Right, I'm not a big channel in terms of the world of YouTube and 40k. We're at 13,000 subscribers. We've sat there for about 2 months because 2 months before Christmas I changed jobs and I didn't put any content out at all. So I wouldn't say I've had it much. I mean, people like Winters, he's had death threats because he changed the style of his content. So those nasty people definitely exist and they're out there. I haven't had anything anywhere near that bad. I'll be honest with you, there's one person who is actively banned from commenting on the channel because his comments were that negative. So actually, interestingly, this started and it was completely irrelevant to the content I was putting out in terms of rules or what I was doing or my style or the look of the channel. It was as soon as we announced the launch of Deployment Zone, and this particular individual took umbrage to the fact that I was making, apparently, Winters monetize his content. And I could tell that he existed because I would put a video up and 3.5 seconds later there was a thumbs down on it, and within moments there was some comment about I was a horrible individual and stuff I won't repeat because it really wasn't very nice. And I actually, I actively took the decision just to ban him and not allow him to make any more comments because although they say every piece of engagement is engagement for the channel and it's good for the algorithm, again, if it's negatively affecting you constantly, I couldn't be bothered to deal with that kind of individual because I genuinely believe that sort of maybe 80-90% of people can be talked around and most of them aren't just nasty people. I don't think that many people that are just pure nasty exist. And I think to some extent, the world of social media, so like Facebook, like Alex was just talking about with Steve, there's almost a lot of fire and forget that happens. You type your comment out, you hit send, and you can forget about it. And it's only when these people get responded to that they suddenly have to sort of be accountable for what they've said and maybe have to try and back it up then with some evidence or some reason as to why they've said it. And often those people, they'll say it in the heat of the moment. They'll be pissed off about something, sometimes probably not even what you've said or done, and they'll fire away. And then when you come back to them, a lot of them will sort of back down. I haven't noticed it much, but my channel's been all over the place for the last couple of years. It started relatively strong. It got a bit stronger. We launched Deployment Zone. It ate all of my time. We then started another series of live streams that were going onto YouTube to try and pull back some content. Nearly destroyed me. Had to stop. Was basically completely burnt out. And that's been sort of a pattern that's been happening. And it's trying to find that happy sort of regular beat. And I've never been there. And I suspect when I get to the point where I hit that regular beat, I'm probably going to see more abuse on YouTube. Because I just think that comes as part of the package, if I'm honest. Not trying to put anyone off producing content for YouTube, just be prepared that happens. And I don't think it matters who you are or how good you are, you're going to get that sort of attention.
It's funny you say that because everyone here has either just started or has had a channel for like the last month or so.
To correct Quipster, Rich has bought a computer. I designed a logo.
Yeah. We have the aim
and I have a channel with a name. That's it.
I mean, a few years ago, I did produce gaming content for YouTube. I did a few gigs of war montages, and it was very, very fleeting. I did it for about 3 or 4 months, and luckily, I was probably good enough at the game where I didn't get a lot of abusive messages. But again, I wasn't very big, so I didn't get a lot of traction with it.
So I think that's interesting. I think it depends on the space you're in as well. Like I follow gaming YouTubers myself, and I don't tend to see as much negative interaction as I see on 40k channels. It's a really weird space, right? 40k, I've already said to you guys that DZ, I want to aim at being a massive sort of community space where we share community content, where we're in it together, we look after each other. I will promote any other channel out there, even if they've got an on-demand service. I don't care if it's Hellstorm, Tabletop Tactics, SN, all of our competitors, yeah, I'll promote them happily. Because a rising tide lifts all ships, and the more people that we've got engaged in the hobby, the more people watching the hobby, the more custom for all of us, the more people that can create better content. And it just it should snowball and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I mean, look at the news articles about Games Workshop lately and how well they're doing. So it's growing, right? Yeah. It's growing. So I would happily promote anybody else. But I have noticed that I think that the 40k community, when a community space gets it right, is incredible. And I think when it gets it wrong, for some reason, it is so horrifically wrong. And I've never fully understood why there's that disparity between the two types of community in 40k. I've never understood it. And you can look in certain Facebook groups and people will just get smashed for how shit their painting is or how terrible their list idea is or whatever it might be. And you go to other groups and you can have something that look like they painted it with a paintbrush in their mouth and everyone's super, like, a really good effort. Like, this is how you could improve it, but it's a great try.
I didn't know you followed me, mate. Thank you.
It's a nice toothbrush, though.
No, there would be no...
You use finger paints, don't you?
Yeah. I actually do it
onto fingers.
I do it onto a potato and then from the potato onto the
But yeah, so like the studio app, what I found with YouTube, if I had to give anybody who was starting a YouTube channel advice, especially in the early days, I would get rid of that studio app and never look at it. And I spoke to Say Hi Paul. So a lot of you will know Say Hi Paul from Winters and then from DZ. And he not too long ago started his own YouTube channel, and he's got a joined membership, and you can go and join him and financially support him. And he's got this own dream that he can maybe go full time as well. And he's an incredible legend within the hobby. And we had a conversation about it because he had some issues that he was facing. And what YouTube does as a sort of platform really, really well is really hook you hard. And what the studio app does is it gives you a ton of data and you become obsessed with it. And if the data is going well and you're gaining views and gaining subscribers and gaining this and gaining that, you'll get little green arrows, and green is good, right? And if it's not going well, you get little red arrows, and it messes with you. And then what I did, and I'll again openly admit, you start changing what you do specifically because of those numbers. And you start chasing subscribers and you start chasing view numbers. And I think when I did that, my content was the worst I've produced. And now what I've done is I've changed my tact, I've changed my style, my type of content. I've got 2 new videos up on the channel that have been up in the last 7 or 8 days. And I've gone back to what I want to do and how I want to produce it, and fuck what the numbers say. Because I believe that if I'm doing that for me, I'm producing my best content. And the piece of advice I would give to anybody is, don't look at the numbers, produce the content that you want to produce. And that will be your best content.
Yeah, I think your Quipster is right. I think we are all looking at doing something on YouTube. I think me and Adam are probably quite similar in that I have a lot of opinions, and fundamentally they are all correct, and the world needs to hear them. Yeah. But moving on to something a bit more jolly, which is the slow decay of the Death Guard.
Nice transition.
Thank you. I thought that was really good, wasn't it?
So smooth.
I thought it was shit.
It's all right. I can cut you out, Liam.
You could have said something like, talking of something poisonous, and then gone on to Death Guard, right? The transition was terrible. You need to. I mean, I know you've only 14 episodes in, but practice.
Yeah. Okay. Cool, so we're going to call it there for an episode. Okay, let's talk Death Guard though. Right, because on release right now, it is 11 o'clock, Saturday morning. The Death Guard rules have officially been announced. All the YouTubers are going through these books. The people want to know what things are powerful, what things are going to shake up the meta, as it were. But I think before we discuss it, I think I'm going to shoot over to Adam for a kind of Netflix preview as the last time on Death Guard. Whereabouts is Death Guard going into this book, Adam? And then as context for the people listening.
Yeah, so the Death Guard are obviously have been up and down in the meta. They were one of the early, or they were the first Codex release alongside the Space Marines in 8th edition. So they were one of the first out there, and they are well known for their, well, frankly, their disgusting resilience. Which, to just quote the name of their trait that they all have, their favoured, feel no pain, and they had a habit of just being very, very, very hard to kill on the tabletop. They are, however, famously fairly slow. So they weren't, I wouldn't say they were a top tier army as far as the meta goes, for most of 8th and probably as we got into 9th. However, they got a big old boost from the Psychic Awakening at the latter end of 8th edition, which gave them a load of new stratagems, a load of new relics, and some really super strong stuff. So if people don't know, there was a relic that gave you like a 4-up invuln on your demon engines, which is crazy good. And then there's things like there was a pistol that you shot somebody with a pistol. It made all your attacks against that target plague weapons, and the thing about plague weapons is it gives you rerolls of 1 if you're roll a 1 to wound, and if you had a certain warlord trait, it gave you complete rerolls to wound. So they got a big old boost from that, and therefore were considered to be a lot more competitive than they used to be. Again, I don't think they were top of the tier, top of the meta, as it were. I think Harlequins, Space Marines, obviously, as always, were up there. But they certainly were in a better place. And I think to Liam, actually, to call out one of your videos you made recently talking about the Death Guard, when you were talking about the preview on Warhammer community, on the Warhammer community website, of some of the new rules, which we will discuss in a minute. One of the things you said is, "Oh, that's disgusting. I don't like that," which is both appropriate and accurate, because obviously one of the things about Death Guard is they're really bloody hard to kill, right? And we all knew that there are going to be changes that are going to come through the game, again, which we'll discuss in a minute, which are going to reinforce that. So, yeah, they weren't quite top tier, but they just needed a few changes to get there. Let's fast forward to today and see if they've got them.
That's the last question. Might it just be worth probably asking one of the better read members of the Conclave, but who are the Death Guard and kind of where they came from?
Yeah. Do you want me to field that one as well?
Yes, please. Educate me.
I was going to say, consider I've got a Death Guard army. So the Death Guards were basically they were led by the Primarch Mortarion. And originally they were actually known as they're actually from a planet called Barbarous, which is where Mortarion rocked up when he was sort of spirited away by the powers of chaos. And the thing about Barbarous was it's covered in a toxic miasma, a sort of fog. And on the heights of the mountains, on Barbarous, there lived these kind of pseudo chaos creatures that used to prey on the ordinary people of Barbarous, the ordinary humans who sort of lived in the valleys below all the fog. And Mortarion actually ended up getting adopted by Vampire Daddy, by one of them, and that's actually who raised him. And one day he wandered down out of the fog, saw that there were ordinary humans who looked a lot more like him, although being a Primarch, he was, big lad, and suddenly was like, hang on a second, this isn't right. I'm going to rebel against these guys. And he basically turned the Barbarian tribes into an army that moved through, were inexorable in just advancing through the toxic nightmare of this planet, laying siege to these creatures, kind of, I guess, fortresses on the top of the mountains. Long story short, Big Daddy E showed up, and basically Mortarion was on the way to kill his adopted vampire daddy. The Emperor showed up and took care of the vampire for him, which laid a sort of seed of resentment in Mortarion, because not even he could survive in the toxic miasma in this particular vampire lord sort of parrots. I'm calling them vampires. They aren't strictly vampires, but they were kind of these kind of creatures that preyed on the humans.
Just picturing him like venturing into the gas in COD or something and being able to
yeah. If you play Call of Duty, Verdansk is a lot like Barbarous.
Basically, imagine a world where there's like a global pandemic.
Yeah.
I wonder what that'd be like.
So the death.
Too soon?
So it's just like, oh, we're living in Nurgle's world now. We are the Death Guard. No, but they went off. They joined the Great Crusade, and they basically became known for that. Also, when the Legion was raised from the tribes of Barbarous, as well as obviously people from Terra and from other Imperial worlds, they became known for one thing, which was basically just the worst nightmarish trench warfare siege situations. They were the guys who went forward and just got it done. Right, so the Iron Warriors obviously are well known for another Legion, well known for their sieges. Also, the Imperial Fists. I'll keep Quipster happy by mentioning them. But the Death Guard were the real like trench warfare, grotty, horrible, worst situations. Send them in; they'll just keep advancing forward. And they used chemical warfare, they used biological warfare, and that's why they have the look of the kind of all the gas masks and.
Was this inspired by World War I
kind of
thing?
Yeah. It's kind of along those lines. And as you can imagine, they attracted the attention during the heresy of Nurgle, who saw their innate resilience. Because one of the things that Marines who were from the Death Guard, who got Mortarion's gene seed, were known for was just their resilience. It was very, very difficult to kill them, whether with conventional weapons or biological weapons or toxins. And Mortarion used to have this practice of forcing his Marines to inhale noxious chemicals that would hurt them, but it would kind of build up their strength against anyone using it against them in the future. And they caught the attention of Nurgle, and thanks to Calas Typhon, who was the first captain of the Death Guard, who you may better know as Typhus these days, he was very much in league with everyone's favourite Chaos Marine, Erebus. I was going to say, I nearly forgot his name. I was going to call him Ezekiel, which is terrible, but Erebus and the force, the forces of Chaos. And he basically led them to damnation, and they were infected with Nurgle's plagues. And unfortunately, the problem was that being Space Marines and being particularly resilient Space Marines, they didn't die. They just suffered endlessly from this horrific disease. So Mortarion, but effectively, and this is why he's quite an interesting Primarch, and I'm sure we'll talk about him more later. But what he does is he doesn't necessarily want to fall to chaos. He hates witches. He hates psychers. He doesn't trust the sort of the chaos gods. But he makes effectively a deal with Nurgle where he says, look, if you will relieve the suffering of my sons in the Legion, I will be your avatar. I will be the demon Primarch, the Primarch of Nurgle, effectively. And so that is the day that the Death Guard are born. And I think there's a great bit of text in the old Codex. It talks about how the fleet the fleet of the Death Guard that had gone into the warp and had been affected by all this emerged on the other side, and they were completely changed. They were bloated. They have like dripping sores, and it's all very disgusting. And they are even in that stage in the heresy, they are by far the most changed of all the Space Marines, apart from maybe the Gal Vorbak, who are the word bearers guys who like share their bodies with demons, so they become kind of the first possessed. But the Death Guard are a whole legion of that. So when the loyalists see them, they just think they're abominations, and they are, frankly. And yeah, ever since then they've been running around the galaxy spreading Nurgle's gifts, Nurgle's love, because that's how he views his diseases. He thinks they're a nice gift for you, and generally causing problems for the Imperium. The latest one being that since the Cadian Gate fell and the Cicatrix Maledictum, the big warp rift that now splits the galaxy in two, Mortarion himself has rocked up in the 500 worlds to have a chat with everyone's favourite XL power user, Rabute Gilliman, and gift him with all of Nurgle's wonderful gifts, and have a sort of brotherly chat. So that's been the latest that the Death Guard have been up to. Although again, I'm sure there is more sort of lore development in the new book.
Bro, use your deodorant, man. Bro.
I mean, the thing I would say about like the Death Guard and Nurgle is that I personally have always hated the aesthetic of Nurgle. That sort of like disgusting, like everything's falling apart, corrosion. I've never enjoyed it. But when I read Buried Dagger, which is the book that details their fall into chaos, that's the book that made me give a shit about the Death Guard and Mortarion. Because it really humanizes them, and it's one of the best heresy books easily. Yeah. But
so it's another chaos army you really like, and you really like the Primarch, yet you still won't admit that you want to collect a chaos army.
I'm not going to. You're
going to do clean loyalist Death Guard. That's what you're going to do. You're going to be like, oh yeah, they've just buffed themselves up and kind of cut off all the horns. They're clean.
Oh my god, no, I refuse. But I talked to Winters actually about this in the fireside chat, a name that I know Liam hates.
That was like, I can't be bothered to come up with a name. Fireside. I'm by a fireplace.
I like it.
Side fire. It was
exactly.
The chat was good. Like,
it invokes a certain imagery.
I listened to the whole chat. Now, I don't watch or listen to content, but there was such good feedback. I thought, I'll put it on, and I listened to the whole chat. The chat was incredibly good. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I mean, the name's still shit, but the chat was good. So.
You need to, Liam. What you need to do is, you need to invest in some nice like leather chairs and some sort of silk dressing gowns, so that Quipster and Winters can sit there with like a glass of brandy and a pipe. Yeah, and it can be like a real fireside chair. Yeah. I say, we're doing today.
Exactly. Yeah, we need a green screen, a nice big fireplace in behind him, rather than that sort of dreary.
Don't do that. You'll get comments. You get comments. Do you see what happened to Norwegian TV when they did that? Sorry, this is a tangent.
No?
But Norwegian in Norway, they have this concept called slow TV, which is where they just show like a crackling fireplace and stuff. And Norwegian TV did a special where it was basically a big log fire, and I guess this is as heated as the comments get in Norway. But there was a massive national debate about whether the logs were stacked correctly, because about 50% of the country believed they should be stacked one way, and the other lot were like, no, that's an idiot's way of making a fire. You do it the other way. So I'm just saying, we're talking about comments on YouTube. You risk the wrath of Norway.
How do you know that?
Are
you single?
He was head of one camp.
I was head of the perpendicular log stacking. No, I'm not single. My other half somehow puts up with me. I do not know how.
Well, what's his name?
No, Adam just knows a lot of things. We're yet to
that's
good.
I want
good
to
at pub
know,
quizzes.
Like, we need to do like a pub. Well, when they open. That should be the thing. I'm gonna come up to London for a pub quiz just because I think maybe with you we might win.
Oh no, you're very welcome.
That Death Guard chat, that was very good. I was very impressed with that. You should put that on YouTube. That sort of stuff. Like that stuff. That's content that does really, really well, right? People are I'm inherently lazy because I don't have time. I don't have time to do anything. So rather than read that shite in the book, I'd rather just tune in and listen to someone tell me what happened with the Death Guard, so I know a bit of narrative behind it, and stuff like that does actually really well, and that was quite good to listen to.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Oh, well, there we go. There's my channel. Tune in for more Death Guard and Norwegian log stacking facts.
Yeah. Norwegian facts and Death Guard.
What a hell of a tangent, even for us. But let's move on then to the Death Guard rules, Liam. So what kind of faction-specific bonuses can Death Guard players be expecting?
I'm going to throw some caveats out quick before I carry on, though. Just because you've claimed that this will definitely be going up 11 o'clock on Saturday, and I think that probably will be the case. But at this stage, I have a codex in hand, and I don't have my instruction from Games Workshop as to when it can be released. Right, so that might change. So people might be listening to this and going, hang on a minute, it wasn't 11 o'clock on Saturday. So that might change. Because obviously to have this, I have to be under NDA. So we cannot release this until they tell us we're allowed. And the only other caveat I want to chuck in there is I received this during a 3-hour Skype call today at work, and I've skimmed it before this chat because I knew you guys had asked me. So I've had a sort of look at it.
So please where can people send their abusive messages when we get stuff on? Is it
this podcast? I'll put Quipster's number in the chat, and they can have that. Right.
The text abuse line.
Yeah, most women out there have got it anyway, but
hey, I mean, according to the YouTube comments I get, I won't get abuse. I'll just get dick pics. That's all I'll get.
And you love it.
So there's a
selfies.
There's a few sort of army-specific rules that they've chucked at us. Some of which are quite interesting. Some of which are no surprise. So they have things like there's a rule called Infernal Jealousy. Infernal Jealousy basically says you can only have one Lord of the Death Guard, and you can only have one Demon Prince of the Death Guard in each detachment. I don't think that's a massive surprise. It's similar to sort of Captains and Chapter Masters from the Space Marine book. You then have another rule called Disease Minions. This one I find super interesting as a rule for a codex, and basically states that you cannot have any, you can't have more Plague Follower units or Poxwalker units than there are Bubonic Astartes core infantry in your Death Guard detachment. So you cannot take cultists or Poxwalkers if you don't have Bubonic Astartes units.
I am well happy about that.
So
that's awesome.
They stick an example in as well. Bubonic Astartes are basically like Death Shroud, I believe, Blight Lord Terminators, Plague Marines. So in their example, if a detachment includes 2 Plague Marine units and a Blight Lord Terminator unit, it can also include up to 3 Death Guard Cultists and up to 3 Poxwalkers. So basically, for every Astartes choice, you get 1 of the Plague Followers and 1 of the Poxwalker choices you can unlock. So you could have 3 choices in the Troops choice of one that's a Death Guard Plague Marine unit, and then you can have the 2 others unlocked. But you won't just see armies of Poxwalkers and Cultists to fill troop choices. You can't do that. Well, you can, but you'd also have to have Bubonic Astartes in your elite slots with your Blight Lord Terminators and your Death Shroud. Really interesting rule. Really like that.
I was going to say, I totally agree. I love that, and I love that because I really hope that's an indicator of where the Chaos Codex goes. Because one thing I fucking hate. And I'm sorry, this is going to upset some people. One thing I will say, sorry, to blow some smoke up your backside for a second, Liam. One thing I like that you do with the Eternal Slaughter is you actually bring Berserkers, and the Marines are the mainstay of the army. What I don't like is this thing that we've seen in the competitive meta more, where people just go like, oh yeah, I'll take a Demon Prince and then like 60 cultists or whatever. Right? There are certain armies where I could sort of see that happening from a narrative perspective, like maybe Alpha Legion or like the Iron Warriors are famous for using big hordes of cultists. But like, no, it's a Chaos Space Marine army. The main thing in it should be Chaos Bloody Space Marines, right? If this is sorry, I'm going on a rant, but that I think that's brilliant. That's a really good change.
I think historically you've almost been able to sort of split 40k into 2 kind of main groups, and that's the competitive and non-competitive groups. Competitive and the narrative. So, and you're right, especially 8th edition and 7th, I played a lot of 7th edition. The competitive groups would be, I don't care about the narrative of the army and that they would use leagues and leagues of Khorne Berserkers. I care about cheap troops choices to get me access to all the powerful toys, and that's what they would play. And then other players who would play the narrative, myself with the Eternal Slaughter in 8th edition, were like, I don't know if cultists hurling themselves at the enemy, for me, is the narrative I want for the Eternal Slaughter and a World Eaters warband. So I don't use them. I don't even have cultists. I don't own them for the Eternal Slaughter. It's all Berserkers and some Chaos Space Marines. I think what they're sort of doing with 9th edition, I think Games Workshop have arguably recognised that in terms of a core rule set, it arguably sort of leans itself a little bit more towards competitive play than it did in the past, because there's a lot more clarification that has basically only come from the tournament scene. And some of these rules they're putting in there are forcing the narrative element, and I personally think that's a positive. And I think it leads me to think that I can go to more sort of chilled events and know that I'm still not going to be facing horrendous cheese because they're stopping you from doing it. And again, I agree with you. I think that's a massive boon for the game.
Yeah, I think it's a common misconception actually that competitive people won't like those kind of changes, because generally speaking, competitive people like those changes. They just have to do whatever is the best. Okay, so those kind of changes are really, really welcome, because actually they just make the game more interesting fundamentally.
Well, it levels the playing field, right? So the majority, you're right, I agree with you 100%. The majority of players, competitive players, will probably like the change because most of them will like narrative as well. But in the past, they would almost have to go down that cheese route because they knew that their opponents would be as well, the guys that didn't care about the narrative. And if they wanted to be able to compete and they wanted to be able to do the best and they wanted to hit things like those ITC rankings, they kind of had to. Because if you didn't, you were... And obviously certain players would be sat there, people like your Nick Nanovites would be sat there trying to break the meta and find something different. But yeah, you're right. I don't think it will be poorly received because it's a level playing field. So everyone who plays Death Guard has that same rule. Like, you can't get around it. So you're not going to have a player that kind of turns up going, here's my narrative Death Guard army with some Bubonic Astartes units. Oh, he's just got Poxwalkers, because he can't do it. So that's brilliant. I love that as a written rule. Inexorable Advance in the previous edition of the Codex was you could rapid fire weapons up to 18 inches, and you counted as you could move and fire heavy weapons without penalty. And to some extent that's similar, but they've sort of changed the wording. And they've changed the wording, obviously, because of the way the core rules of 9th edition work. So Inexorable Advance now gives you 3 benefits. So you count as having remained stationary even if you move, unless you fell back or advanced. So for firing heavy weapons for infantry, there's no penalty. But also that means that for malicious volleys or bolter discipline, for those of us that play Loyalist, you get that even if you move, you get to fire at 24 inches, which is amazing. They also get the ability to fire heavy weapons without penalty, even in engagement range, if you're a vehicle. So massive for things like plague bust crawlers and stuff like that. There's a stratagem that I found that also plays with that not only allows them to fire heavy weapons in combat, but also gives them +1 to hit if they're in combat, and allows them to fire blast weapons at enemies that are in engagement range.
Wow.
That's vile for plague bust crawlers.
God.
Yeah, massive, right? Really big deal. We'll find it later, and I'll read it out to you on the off chance that I've skim read it and I've got it wrong, but I'm pretty convinced. And then, finally, the infantry in a Death Guard army don't suffer the penalty for moving or advancing or charging, full stop. And I believe this means that things like, so one you love, Alex, Custodes Tanglefoot grenades, I don't think it works in Death Guard. I don't think it works.
Damn.
Quite literally says, if it has the infantry keyword, it can ignore any or all modifiers to move, advance rolls, and charge rolls. So that's really cool.
As a Custodes player, I'm just going to put this out there and just say that is some bullshit.
As a Death Guard player.
With your raft of stratagems that you have, I watched you play Winters recently against his Tyranids, and you're calling that some bullshit?
Oh yeah, what was it? Hey, you cannot say bullshit, Alex, when you're standing there going, oh yeah, I just need a 3-up and a 3-up and a 3-up.
Custodes players take 3 things to games now. They take their Codex, they take the Psychic Awakening book, and a bottle of lube. That's all they need.
Hey, you're just saying this after the last time I played your Harlequins.
We're not talking about that.
I've managed to slaughter his Terminators. Memory.
That's true, actually. Rich took out my Terminators.
In one turn.
So, he just obliterated them. It was painful.
Rich, we need to become best friends.
I'm game.
I need to know exactly how you did that, and then just do that every time I play.
Blade Guard vet, it's done.
So another detachment. So the final detachment ability. They've got a section for detachment abilities, obviously. So the final detachment ability that you get is a thing called Fetid Virion, which is a strange one. Super interesting. Really like it. Basically, there are models with the Fetid Virion keyword, and you're looking at things like the Biologist Putrefier, or the Noxious Blightbringer, or the what's the guy with the big plague spear? Maybe I've already
Foul Blight
those kind of characters. Yeah, Foul Blight Spawn. You've got I think the Tallyman's included as well. So interestingly, with those particular models, and Death Guard have a lot of them, right? They've got a lot of different versions of those same ones, and even with the 6 elite slots you get, you probably wouldn't. Some people wouldn't be able to cram them all in. Fetid Virion means that for every 3 of those types of models you take, it takes up 1 elite slot.
Oh, cool.
The only rule in that is, the only caveat is they have to be 3 different Fetid Virion units to fill that 1 elite slot. So you can't take 3 Noxious Blightbringers in 1 elite slot. It would have to be one of 3 different types of those particular models. Really nice rule, though. I quite like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
That is very cool. I'm a big fan.
I'm really liking the way that they're changing up army composition, so that you can't just spam 3 of everything.
Well, it's good though, because as you say, the big problem, having a Death Guard army, one of the big problems with it is they have too many of those. Like, they have all these beautiful sculpts of all these little individual characters, but then you just never took all of them because. I mean, let's leave aside the fact that the rules for some of them were a bit pants, but you just couldn't really fit them in.
No, absolutely. I do honestly think. Having read that this afternoon, I do think that might actually be cause for FAQ though. So if I'll read you the rule word for word, right? You can include up to 3 Fetid Virion units in a Death Guard detachment, while only taking up 1 elite battlefield roll slot. Each of these units must be from a different datasheet. What I question is, can you choose to use 3 elite slots and take 3 blight spawns? Or if you take 3 blight spawns, must you then take 6 other models to be able to use 3 blight spawns? So are they stopping you from using 3 of the same without having a variety in there? Is that you must use 1 slot for 3 and then the next slot is the next 3 and the next slot's the next 3, stopping you from taking 3 of the same without any mix or matching? Or is that a case of you can have 3 or a slot, or you can have the same 3 but it will take you 3 slots? That would be an interesting... I don't know if that will get FAQ'd or not, or whether I'm reading too much into it.
I'm assuming it's the exact same wording as lieutenants.
You could be cheeky with that as well, because you could have, for example, because the blight spawn, again, subject to his rules changing, the blight spawn is very good. You could have 2 blight spawn and then take a Noxious Blightbringer and a Tallyman and just go, okay, well those 2 slot in with Blightbringer A, and then Blightbringer B is just on his own. So, that's
I think that's the intention.
Yeah, no, I sort of hope it is. It just leads to some cheeky combos.
And what you're not doing is destroying slots that you would otherwise use for Blightlord Terminators or Death Shroud Terminators and stuff like that. So Hell Brutes and stuff. So yeah, I really like it. I think that's a cool rule that means you're potentially going to see more of the character of the Death Guard army in the future. I like to think, but we'll see. It then goes on to cover the 7 different plague companies, the Harbingers, the Inexorable. Basically, each of those gets a stratagem, a warlord trait, and a relic. They're mostly average to good. There's some decent ones in there. There's some sort of I've sort of skimmed it earlier. What's really interesting with this one, though, is the Warlord traits. And the reason why that's interesting is because I think there's a possibility you're going to see more of Mortarion. And now Mortarion has 3 Warlord traits as standard, and he's allowed to take a 4th, and he can choose any one of these as his 4th, and some of them are really dirty. All of them, however, do work alongside the contagion discipline, not the discipline, the contagion rule that they've got. So although it's not listed under detachment abilities, it is a detachment ability, which is supremely confusing for some people, obviously. But the contagion rule is one of my new favourite things about the Death Guard, and I'm racing to find it. I pretty much know it off the top of my head anyway.
It's -1 strength for a particular radius.
So basically,
toughness. Sorry.
If your army's battle forged, everything is Death Guard, excluding unaligned units. All those units then get the contagion ability. So I questioned in my preview video before we got the codex who would have it. I thought that they might limit it to characters, and that might be the sort of restricting factor. No. If you're in a Death Guard army detachment and everything's Death Guard, everything gets it unless they're unaligned. And what it does is, from turn 1 onwards, it's a 1-inch radius for everything in the army. Turn 2 is 3, 3 is 6, 4 plus is 9 inches. And anything within radius of that unit is -1 to toughness. Wow. So early game, not so much of a big deal. I said in the video, a unit of Gene Stealers charging you in first turn, they'll suffer from -1 toughness. But otherwise, not a massive deal. You start hitting turn 3 and 4, and you're looking at 6 and 9 inch ranges. That's pretty vile. I say that. Mortarion's range always counts as 9. Typhus adds 6 inches to the range, up to a maximum of 12 inches. So there is things that exist within the Codex that make that range longer. And you're talking about making Space Marines and Primaris Marines toughness 3. That's huge, I think. That's a massive change to the rule. And all these Warlord traits that exist for this... Yeah, I thought you'd like that. Fucking Custodes. I loved Custodes in the narrative, and then I played you.
This is where Liam starts planning a Death Guard army.
Can we cover Mortarion whilst on it, actually? Because very famously, GW released the datasheet for Mortarion with a load of rules that made no sense to anybody because we didn't know what the rules were. Notably, there are a couple of things that changed. So, how is Mortarion looking?
So, did they release his points? I don't remember if they gave us his points for him now.
Yeah, they said it was 490, I think.
Yeah, he's 490 points. He's like he's just the core of your army now if you take him in a strike force in a 2,000 point army. And I question whether that might be putting him slightly too high. But I mean, the man's an absolute monster now. We've all seen the data sheet. He's a toughness 8, 18 wound monster. So he's gone up to toughness 8. He's strength 8 base now. Most of his other stats are pretty much the same. But that's his reaping blow and eviscerating scythe that he has is just... I don't know who thought of this. They're bad people. So he can choose to fight in one or two profiles. And eviscerating blow for him is, as we've seen, is times 2. So he's strength 16, AP -4, D3 plus 3 damage and a plague weapon. His reaping scythe is he gets to make 3 attacks for each attack. And he's got 7 attacks. You're talking 21 attacks. Strength 8, AP -2 and 1 damage. And he's got the contagion ability, obviously, and disgustingly resilient. Disgustingly resilient changed. I'm sure we all know this now. It's no longer a 5-up. This is interesting. It's no longer a 5-up shrug save like it used to be, like a Feel No Pain. It's now a -1 to damage. So basically like the Ancient's ability that Dreadnoughts get in Space Marine Codex. Everything in the Death Guard Codex has that. Big deal when you talk about fire and plasma at Death Guard Plague Marines and stuff, because they take 1 damage instead of 2 if you overcharge. Mortarion has that ability, so -1 damage, but he also has one of 3 Warlord traits, which is Revoltingly Resilient. And I can confirm that Revoltingly Resilient is a 5-up Feel No Pain. So he
damn!
Jesus.
Yes!
Right.
Yes!
That's brutal.
Alex,
I've
got to finish painting him, but when we can play again, that Morty is going to be flying across the board at your Alarus and
He's already
laughing.
been battered by Morty once.
Fuck you, man.
And that's Adam, I think, 5 minutes after criticising people for taking cultists and Chaos Space Marine armies.
Look. I am happy to try and be Mr. Narrative, and I'm happy to try, the criticisms. But Alex, and I say this with love, when I'm playing Alex, when he's bringing his golden boys with their 3-up invuns, I am happy to be Captain Brie. I am the cheesemonger. That's my play.
Pleased to know as well, Adam. that's not his only Warlord trait. He also keeps Arch Contaminator, and Arch Contaminator is changed slightly. So each time a model in that unit makes a melee attack with a plague weapon, you can reroll all wound rolls instead of just wound rolls of 1. We do that anyway.
I like it.
Same for ranged weapons, but you have to be within 12 inches range. So no longer can you reroll all weapons for Arch Contaminator at 40 inches away. You've got to be with 12 inches, and that's alongside all this new. You've got to be in range of the stench and the disease in order to be affected by it. So I quite like that. But he also has another one. He also has Living Plague. And Living Plague is an aura ability that if you're within 3 inches of the Warlord, that unit cannot be affected by any other aura abilities. So if Mortarion is in range of the Terminators that Alex has, and he's got a shield captain behind him, you can shove your rerolls up your backside, Trajan. Not happening. Not happening.
Can I just say on that, why I love that is because we've had a bunch of books so far, and we started off with the Space Marine book, and they were like, hey, we can give OBSEC to any unit, and then Bloodhaven just went, not only can we place OBSEC to every unit, but we can turn off your OBSEC for any unit, and our Death Guard have come in and said, you get fuck all.
There's a lot of auras out there that prevent you from fighting first. That doesn't happen now.
Well, also just on the Arch Contaminator change as well. I think that's another really good one because it not only obviously the way people always used to use Arch Contaminator, and I say used to, probably obviously still do, absent this book coming out, is you sit a Warlord at the back with Arch Contaminator with all your demon engines, and they just start firing off across the board, and you're just re-rolling all the wounds. But now, if it's only 12 inches, it makes you be much more, and again, feeding into bringing the narrative into competitive play, it makes you be much more Death Guard-y. You have to advance towards the enemy, and obviously with the other changes to, not suffering a penalty from moving and firing heavy weapons, obviously as a vehicle across the game, but then also the Death Guard and Extra Advance rules. It's so fluffy. I love it. It's great.
The reason I really like that is because that was one of the main reasons not to take Morty.
Yeah.
Because that ability was so incredibly powerful that because Mortarion had to take that Warlord trait, and you pretty much have to make him a Supreme Commander because you want to pay the CP for him, that you'd have to take him, give him that Warlord trait, and now you don't have to do that. There's no reason to drop him for something else, which I think is a really big deal. Because we want to see
the other thing I was going to add as a Custodians player is that this is all bullshit and I hate it all. Fuck you guys.
Can I, Liam? Can I just ask? Sorry, to go slightly off the Mortarion data. Is there anything else on the Mortarion data sheet you want to talk about before I jump on to something else? Because it's
so there's a couple of things to cover. Death to the False Emperor is gone. I can't see it anywhere. It doesn't exist. But same as this, what's interesting is same as Hateful Assault. There's no Hateful Assault either. So where Marines kept Shock Assault, Hateful Assault's gone. Death to the False Emperor's gone.
I like that though. I like that they're differentiating the two factions. That's cool.
I do like that they're differentiating. I 100% agree with you on that one. But I don't like ever loyalists having access to more toys that we don't have. I think Hateful Assault even makes more sense than Shock Assault if it's going to be one way around than the other. But hey, I don't care. He also counts every battle round as 4. So Toxic Presence means he counts every battle round as 4. So when you're looking at all these auras that he has from the Contagion ability and being -1 toughness, it's always 9 inches for Mortarion. So he starts off with it being 9 inches away, and obviously he's a character that can fly 12 inches, so that's a big deal. I think you can see a lot of tactical moving now for -1 toughness bubbles, and like I said, that's 3 Warlord traits that he gets, but he gets access to a 4th one, and you can pick the one you want from the 7 plague hosts, and you can choose the one that you best suits Mortarion, arguably, and they're all linked to the contagion range of that model. So these Warlord traits for a normal Warlord will be a 1-inch range in the first turn. Mortarion, no, 9 inches. So that's a big deal. I question how worth it he is at 490 points, but with a 4-up invulnerable save, -1 damage, 5-up feel no pain, you don't want to go anywhere near him. Actually, he's got Arch Contaminator, which everybody wanted anyway. I would argue he's a decent unit. I just don't know whether that might be slightly too expensive. We'll see.
Everything about this scares me.
It's very tough to tell if big models are going to be worth their points because they bring so much but cost so much. So, we'll see. People were saying the same about Catan, and now they've had to raise the points on the Nightbringer. So
the thing that interests me with the Mortarion as well is that you can dump him on an objective pretty quickly, right? Because if we talk about 9th edition and we don't talk about narrative play, we just talk about the generic missions, it's an objective-based game. If I put that model on an objective, is anyone want to go anywhere near it to take it off me? You're not going to want
the
to
Nightbringer.
Everything's an aura. Well, yeah, touche. But he's good, and like I said, he's got access to all these additional Warlord traits, and you could pick one, so you even get a degree of customization with Mortarion now, if you want to. I like it. He's a good model.
So I guess, and I guess we can talk about those warlord traits and the plague companies, if that's okay, as I guess our next thing. But the question,
it's your podcast. You tell me.
The question, you are the Lord of Plagues, mate. You've got the book. You're the tallyman reading from Nurgle's list of diseases. But what I was going to say is the question I suspect every Death Guard, particularly competitive Death Guard players, will be asking, and it's not about warlord traits, but it is about the plague company. So I'm hoping I'm not forcing you to flick about in the book here. Is relic wise, have the poxmongers still got the iron clot furnace? And while you're checking
it
that out,
it says iron clot furnace. It says iron clot furnace. What did it do before?
Right, so the iron clot furnace before meant that models in friendly poxmongers demon engine units had a 4-up invulnerable save whilst they were within 7 inches of whoever had the relic.
So
good lord!
So much like a lot of changes that have happened in 9th edition, where instead of being an aura where everything within 6 or 7 inches is affected, this has gone down the same vein as things like rerolls for chapter masters and stuff. Iron Clot Furnace, in your command phase, you can select one friendly Poxwalker's demon engine unit within 6 inches of the bearer until the start of your next command phase. Models in that unit have a 4+ invulnerable save.
That's good.
Fantastic. Less castling. What we want to see.
Yeah, less castling. Yeah, because that's what I mean, right? So that was the end of the. That was the post-psychic as I smashed stuff everywhere in my angle.
Adam's so excited about
Do you know what the funniest thing was?
That was his demon engines.
That was the shunt off the front of a half-built burst crawler as well, so that's impressive.
Thank God it wasn't Mortarion.
No, but the strategy people would use is they would sit there, as I say, about the Arch Contaminator thing. You give your Warlord Arch Contaminator, you give him the Iron Clot Furnace relic, you sit him in the middle with 2 Plague Burst Crawlers and maybe some Mephitic Blight Haulers, and there's your castle, and it's boring, right? This is, I think it's right. It's going to be movement, and it's going to be a lot more interesting.
I think one of my biggest complaints that I had with 8th edition on the whole was the sort of inference of castles and how castles became the thing that happened in 8th edition, and you were borderline punished if you didn't use them, and I didn't like that. And I've got a ton of players who played Marines. Marines, I would argue, are one of the worst for castles because they had so much access to so many different types of rerolls. And I mean, my best friend Brom is an Ultramarines player, and he has a well-painted Gullyman that he loves, and he almost didn't want to bring him. Because it was arguably too strong, and it forced him to play in a way that he didn't want to, because you're paying a points tax for an aura ability, because that's obviously factored into the points. So you want to make use of it, otherwise what's the point in having that aura ability? And then you end up with a big castle, and for me that's not 40k. The changes to those auras, the chopping down the board size, all the stuff that they're doing, I'm so for it, because I've played games now where you are in every quadrant, in every quarter, all across the battlefield, there's stuff going on. That's war for me. That's what I love.
Isn't this one of the big reasons that you quite liked ITC rules in 8th? Because it meant that you had to go out into the board and actually do things because of the secondaries.
So I had a poisonous little hatted troll in my ear who used to tell me forever, "Fuck tournaments, don't like tournament players. Tournament players are bad." Like constantly. I think he's got a message on send every 20 minutes that just comes through to the phone. "Fuck tournaments." So in 8th I didn't touch ICC for ages, and it was only sort of not even, I guess, 6 to 12 months before the end of 8th edition, I finally discovered ITC. And it was only because I went to a Hellstorm event because I wanted to support the team up there and go and say hello and meet people, and that's what I use events for. I'm never going to win an event. I'm not good enough. I go to mingle and just chat to people because I love the sort of, like I say, the community feel and the social interaction. And he was playing ITC rules. I turned up having not read the rules pack because... why would you do that? That's boring. So I got there and it's ITC. What does this mean? You need to pick secondaries. Okay, what are they? And I learned on the day and actually came away from that going, they were some of the better games of 40k in 8th edition I'd played because of exactly what you said, Alex. Because depending on the secondaries you picked, you could pick secondaries that meant you didn't need to castle, that encouraged you to push across the board and do different things. And I like the fact that it added a semblance of balance that I didn't think really existed at times in 8th edition. So yeah, I love that. And I like the way that they're going with 9th. And there was some comments actually on one of my first videos, I think it was, about 8th and 9th edition and the differences and whether it was a success changing to 9th. And someone said in Discord, one of our Discord members said that I don't think you needed to change the core rules. I think you could take 8th edition, put the FAQs in the rulebook and release it. It would have been fine. And he's not wrong. It would have been fine. But I like the fact they've actively tried to change the behaviour of some of these armies and the way that they play. I personally think it's a positive in the long run.
Come on, Tyranids, rebuild from the ground up, please.
So yeah, Liam, for context, Adam is in the process of building a Tyranids army.
I'm in the process of doing all sorts of things, but yes, the Tyranids army is the 2021 New Year, New Army
process
thing
of every
I've
army
decided to go for.
Adam, you can also be my best friend.
Are you doing? Oh,
Yeah, I thought you might say that.
happily.
This is like a whole new exclusive again. You're getting all of it out of me tonight.
Bloody
I haven't
hell.
even been drinking. I have a bet on with my tattoo artist for 2021, who suggested to me that it was physically impossible for me as a person to start a brand new army from scratch and finish it before the 31st of December 2021. If I fail in that challenge, and that's painting of 2,000 points of a new army, then I'd have to send him that whole army to have himself. If I'm successful, he'll do a whole day session on my arm for free. So that's about 400 or 500 quid's worth. So it's in my best interest to do this. But then I had to look at the armies that I hadn't yet started, and there wasn't many. So I started a Tyranid army.
Nice.
So you thought you picked the one with the most models?
No. Rippers for troops, nothing but monsters.
Yeah, big boys, big chunky monster mash. Do you know what I saw? Actually, I saw a great list described the other day, and I'm going to butcher the name, so apologies to him. But I think it was Innes Wilson, who's like one of the Team Scotland guys, who's been on 40k today and various other ones. But he was making a suggestion for what he called Doug Dimmadome and the Dimsdale Special or something, which is where you take a bunch of Dimacarons, which are the big Forge World prey and mantis looking things, and then just loads of Hierodules, which are the sort of squat monsters from Forge World, and that's your Tyranid list, and you just go, right, cool, away we go. So that's how you beat your tattoo artist.
Lovely idea, but in the last 5 days, I might now own about 2,500 points of Tyranid.
And I've been getting some of these pictures, and I'm just like, Liam, what the fuck?
And then I got this, and I've got a complete unpainted Death Guard army upstairs as well. I'm like, now I want to do Death Guard. And my tattoo artist is going, no, Tyranids, dickhead, or no deal. Oh, for God. Actually, what he's doing is he's saying, yeah, paint Death Guard, because he knows what I'm like, and he knows I'll go, all these Tyranids can go in a cupboard, and I'll do the Death Guard. So, yeah, he's a horrible man.
That's awesome. No, I'm glad. Fellow sort of Tyranids newbie starting it. I'd say I got the box, the Christmas one they did. So I got that, and also Ed very kindly, I think my partner asked Ed what she should get me for Christmas, and he was like, get him a Swarm Lord. So I've got one of those knocking about now that I've just built. So yeah, we're getting there. I've got to work on my scheme yet, and I also need a cool name for the Hive Fleet. But yeah, we'll see what we get to.
Unicorn.
Oh, I thought we decided that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I haven't. It's not final yet, but I was going to go with Hive Fleet Draugr. I think that was
I think, nice. Rich, have you got Tourette's? You just shouted unicorn. I like that. I appreciate that.
Hive Fleet
Unicorn.
But yeah.
I'm a fan.
If listeners have Hive Fleet suggestion names for myself or Liam, if you're taking them as well, I don't know if you are, then please feel.
No.
Full stop. We looked for a long time. I spent a good hour and a half looking for you.
Rich, you really got into this. You did a lot of research. You were like, Basilisk. Oh no, someone's probably taken that. Oh,
very obvious.
Oh no, you did a lot of work, mate. You did a lot of work. I appreciate that.
And then Unicorn was the best one I came up with, Lip. No.
Hive Fleet Unicorn, yeah.
Just little horns on the top of every single one.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. That sounds like a plan. And painted pink and white, definitely. I like that.
To be fair, actually, I really like the idea that you've got for the narrative between Adam, your army, and Ed. Your Gene Stealer.
Yeah, so the idea, Liam, behind the Hive Fleet is basically Ed has a Gene Stealer cult army that is all very cool. It's all very sort of, I'll let him talk about it in detail, but it's converted. It's based on a farming, an agri world, and so the idea behind my Hive Fleet is we are the Tyranid Hive Fleet that is being called by his Gene Stealer cult. That's where his patriarch comes from. So that's the sort of narrative link between the two of them.
I have so much time for people that do loads of conversion work, because I start with the best intentions to do that, and I just can't be bothered about a third of the way in. I go, why did I do it this way? Why don't I just build the models as they were? And now I'm committed, and I fucking can't be arsed. And the people that commit to it and they end up with these glorious, bespoke armies take my hat off to them. They're incredible. They're like my favourite things.
This is why you've got so much Forge World, just in your garage.
I have so much Forge World. Actually, massive shout out to Forge World customer service. So I ordered the Forge World Ripper bases, right, because the standard plastic ones are dog shit, and I've bought 4 sets of 3 because I need 3 sets of 3. But you can never have too many spares. And 2 of the boxes turned up with 40mm bases, 3 40mm bases, and 2 of the boxes turned up with a single 60mm base in each one. I was like, that's no good. And I had a real purge at the end of last year where I chucked a load of shit away that I didn't need, or donated models to people and went, do you want this? Do you want that? And I gave loads of stuff away. I think I gave Chris Giles, I him about 2,500 points of plastic Eldar that hadn't been painted, and I just got rid of loads of stuff. Get rid of it, and have a purge so I could buy a whole Tyranid army. And
you're the reason I've got all these Marines.
Exactly, yeah. And I emailed Forge World on Sunday when I opened the Rippers to clean them up, and I was like, oh, that's not helpful, and I haven't got any spare bases. So I just emailed Forge World, just so you know, I got some 60mm bases. If you could send me the bases, that'd be helpful. You might want to check the ones, because they're like sealed blister packs, right? So you might want to check some of your other ones to make sure you've not got the same problem. Got an email back today, just sent me 2 new packs of Rippers. Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Forge World customer service is so good.
Nice.
It's incredible, right? They just go, here's a whole new model. Sometimes I want to pretend to complain just to get a new one.
That was a lot of other companies. You just would have got told. Just would have been, oh yeah, no mate, it's just a big swarm. Just live with it.
What's funny though is I bought a model from Forge World about a year ago. I don't remember exactly what the model was, and it had a horrific cast line on it where it slipped. It had a horrible resin slip on it. And I emailed Forge World and said, it might have been, and I emailed Forge World and said, look at this resin slip. How the fuck do I fix this? All the sanding and green stuff in the world is just never going to keep its shape. This is horrendous. What do I do? And the response I got from them on that occasion was basically, fucking man up and get on with it. Okay, I'll get the sandpaper out and we'll try. So, missing a base, whole new set of Rippers. Complete miscast, basically. Nah, get on with it, mate. Okay, cool. Right. So it depends on who's in that day, I think. I think it depends on who's on the other end of the emails.
Ask for Gary.
What sort of day they're having.
Brilliant. We've talked about Mortarion. He is certainly very, very important. But there are lots of important changes that I think people are keen to know about, not only specific to Death Guard, but also things that might hint at things to come. We've already talked about Demon Princes. That's a huge change, the fact you can only have one. They are certainly one of the powerhouses of the Chaos Demon book and Chaos Space Marine book. So
Tzeentch as well. Massive change for Tzeentch armies.
For sure.
For Thousand Suns.
Yeah. And so what kind of changes have we got for Typhus?
I will get you to the page right now, my friend.
Brilliant.
He says, there's tons of rules. Tons and tons of rules. Typhus. Okay, so he doesn't look, to me, all that different. He has still got a 4-up invulnerable save because he's got diseased Terminator armour. So the Cataphractii plate has changed. So Cataphractii plate used to be half your advance rolls. Gone. That's disappeared
thank
completely.
God for that.
So Cataphractii Terminator, yeah, you advance as normal now, which is, I think, really a real big change. His cleave is now is Man Reaper, or whatever you call it. His mastercrafted Man Reaper has now got 2 profiles, so you can hit at +3 strength, AP -3 flat 3 damage as a plague weapon, and you -1 to hit, but he's weapon skill 2+ anyway. Or you can do 2 attacks for every attack instead of 1, and he's got 6, so you'll get 12 attacks with Typhus. Strength +1, so strength 5, AP -1, 1 damage. That's super cool. Again, his ability to reroll isn't there, if I remember rightly, so he doesn't have. Oh no, he does actually. Lord of the Death Guard. When a friendly Death Guard core unit is within 6 inches of the model. Oh. So that's an aura ability as well. That's a unit.
That's new as well, because that was a weird thing about Typhus, and I think the Lord of Contagion as well, who I'm assuming is on a similar page, was that they didn't have the Chaos Lord ability. So they introduced in Psychic Awakening, certainly for the Lord of Contagion, they bolted on the ability to make them into effectively a Chaos Lord.
So the Lord of Contagion also has the Lord of the Death Guard aura. When a friendly Plague Company core unit is within 6 inches of this model, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, reroll hit rolls of 1. So that's really cool, actually. Yeah. I didn't think he'd gain that, and that's something I just found. He's got a new rule called Vector of Disease. Add 3 inches to the contagion range of contagion abilities the model has to a maximum of 12. So in turn 4, his contagion range ability is 12 inches rather than just the 9 inches. He starts off with a 4-inch contagion range, which is pretty cool. He gets Host of Destroyer Hive, which used to be a really terrible rule, if I remember rightly. In your command phase, you can select one enemy unit within 6 inches of this model and roll a dice on a 2+. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. It's like Smite.
Yeah, because Host of the Destroyer Hive used to just be buffing up Poxwalkers. That was the add 1 to strength and toughness of Poxwalkers.
Which is now Master of the Dead Who Walk, which is an aura ability. When a friendly Poxwalker's unit is within 6 inches of this model, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, add 1 to the strength characteristic of that attack. They've lost the +1 to toughness because they've got a base boost to their toughness to toughness 4 now. So they're toughness 4 anyway. So he keeps that ability, and Host of the Destroyer Hive has changed. And he's a Herald of Nurgle, so he can be included in any Death Guard detachment without preventing other units in detachment from carrying a Plague Company contagion. This model can only carry a Plague Company contagion if it is in a Harbinger's detachment. So you can chuck him in any detachment, but he'll only get the Plague Company benefit if he's in a Harbinger's one. So that's cool as well.
Does this all mean your basic Lord of Contagion, who you didn't really see much before, has his abilities changed? Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there was an extra war gear option on his data sheet. Someone correct me if I'm wrong.
So for the Lord of Contagion?
Yeah.
So he has the Vector of Disease. He gets the +3 inches to his Contagion abilities as well. Still sits in Disease Terminator armor for 4 up and vulnerable save. And he has the Lord of the Death Guard aura that we spoke about. He's got a Man Reaper and a Plague Reaper. And his model's Plague Reaper can be replaced with a Man Reaper and one Orb of hang on, wait, let me...
Yeah, I think this is it, the
Orb of Desiccation. I'm getting old, my eyes are screwed.
That's the one.
So, if he starts off with his Plague Reaper, brilliant. He can. That's a normal ×2 strength, AP -3 flat 3 damage. It makes him strength 8, AP -3 flat 3, and it's -1 to hit. And he's weapon skill 2+ as normal, so he's hitting on 3s with that. But he can chop that in for a Man Reaper and this Orb, and I think you'll see it. The Man Reaper is a +3 AP -3 flat 2 damage plague weapon, or you can hit 2 attacks for every 1 attack, and he has 5. That's 10 attacks. Strength +1, AP -1, 1 damage. It's really big that they're bringing this into a lot of these models because I think they'll see a lot more play. And then he's got this Orb of Desiccation, which I've not seen before. A 6-inch grenade that is 3d3 shots. Strength 4, AP -1, flat 2 damage. Blast Plague weapon. The bearer can only shoot this weapon once per battle. So it's once per battle, but that's pretty cool. At 2 damage.
You know what's funny? That I can you sort of see that the only reason that Orb of Desiccation, there's only one Lord of Contagion model who has any kind of orb like modelled on him, which is if you guys remember Lord Felfius and the Blighted Cohort or whatever they were called. There was that like weird box you could buy that was just one Lord of Contagion with a big smile on his face, holding up like this ball that was dripping with plague gunk, and he came with two Death Shroud or Blight Lord Terminators. So it's quite funny they've introduced that, because then it's like, oh, we've now got a reason to use this model if we want to show him with the orb.
What's super interesting with things like the Lord of the Contagions, because I question whether you'll see them, and the reason why I question whether you'll see them is because now you have Death Guard Chaos Lords and Death Guard Chaos Lords and Terminator armor, and they're Chaos Lords and Chaos Lords and Terminator armor, but and I raved about this on the video, and I will continue to. They gain Disgustingly Resilient, they gain Contagion of Nurgle, they have Sedulars of Corruption, so now you have Toughness 5 Chaos Lords with -1 damage and the Contagion ability, rather than just a Chaos Lord plucked out of a Chaos Codex painted green.
Yeah.
Really big deal.
Awesome.
And because of the potential for loadouts on him, you might see him more than you'll see a Lord of Contagion, because you've just got more variety. Yeah. And don't forget, they've now got Deadly Pathogens. And Deadly Pathogens is an ability that you have within the detachment now. And if you have a Death Guard character models, or a Bubonic Astartes model with a champion keyword, I'm remembering it, but I've got it here in front of me somewhere. Here, you can pay points to upgrade them. So this is like, I guess, going for a Chief Apothecary or a Master Librarian, and you pay a point, and that point gives you an ability. So, for example, Vicious Death as an ability, you could pay that 10 points that costs you to stick that on your Lord of Contagion with his grenades, and each time you roll to determine the number of attacks made with this weapon, you can re-roll the result. 10 points. Lovely job. Thanks very much.
All fantastic.
Foul Blightspawn likes that one.
Yeah, each time there's another one. Corrosive Filth, that's 20 points, but each time an attack is made with this weapon against a vehicle unit, add 1 to the damage characteristic of that attack. Now, you can stick that on your Lord of Contagion if you kept his original flat 3 damage weapon. He's now got a flat 4 damage strength 8 weapon when he's attacking vehicles. It's quite tasty, isn't it? There's lots of little ones like that as well in there as well.
Yeah. That's awesome. It was always weird that you had the Chaos Lords who were like strength 4, toughness 4, Like you said it in your video about what was it? What's his name? Winter's guy, Sabat.
I don't get me started.
It's just like, wait, what? He's tough this for?
That came up in the Bad Moon pub quiz. What is the one Nurgle unit that doesn't have that rule?
Yeah. And Adam was like, I don't know. Have you got any questions on Norwegian fireplace?
Now those I can answer.
Yeah, I think generally that's really positive because I think what we want to see is Liam kind of umming and ahhing there about it. Well, this is really good and this is really good because it means no matter what is in your Death Guard army, you should be really excited. And that definitely seems to be the case. I think all of those options sound fantastic. One thing I do just want to pick up on because it is really, really significant. You mentioned the Apothecary. Does the Plague Surgeon, as lots of people have questioned, give 6-up Feel No Pain? Because that is a big deal.
While a friendly bubonic Astartes infantry unit is within 3 inches of this model, each time that model in a unit would lose a wound, roll a d6 on a 6+, that wound is not lost.
Interesting. Still very, very good. Still very, very good. You know, like you said earlier, you're going to have to take more Plague Marines, so that's a big deal. But really, really cool. Fantastic.
There is obviously also a relic you can chuck it in, which increases the range of that aura ability by 3 inches as well, so you can make it a 6-inch ability, but that will use up your relic to do that.
Can I just say this is really great to see because I don't play a Chaos Space Marine factions, but my mate AJ does, and I have to hear a lot about how Space Marines are horrible. So it is one of the best things a Space Marine player can hear is how good Chaos Space Marines are going to get because it makes me happy.
I mean, some of this is in a vacuum because I haven't done a lot looking at points. So, for example, if you look at Mortarion's rules in a vacuum, he is shit scary and one of the stronger units I think the game has seen. But at 490 points, when you take it out of that vacuum and you look at what you potentially could get for the same points cost, are we going to see him loads? I don't know. I'm not sure. A lot of these rules, I read them and think, Jesus Christ, they're so strong. But if you can only take, if you can take 2 or 3 units less than you used to be able to take, maybe it's not going to have as big an impact as perhaps we think.
The problem with that mentality, Liam, is, and whilst I do completely respect your opinion, it does completely diminish my ability to get outraged on the internet. And so therefore, I'm going to have to disagree with you. But thanks very much.
But it just sounds like a lot of options now. Like you can build a list in so many different ways, which will make for so much more interesting, hopefully more interesting games and different armies you're facing.
Well, it's just
just that Lord of Contagion thing. It's like everybody has those units in their army, right? Where they're like, like this never sees any play. It's just not good. And that was a good example. It just never saw any play, and now it's like boom.
Plague Surgeon. Plague Surgeon's the same. You're absolutely right. It's like Plague Surgeon was the same. Nobody took the Plague Surgeon because he was crap. Like he just didn't do anything for you. But now even that with the 6-up Feel No Pain, that's really good.
It's really good.
When you factor in the fact that they've lost their Feel No Pain across the board, it's actually quite a big deal. And if you give him the Fulgurist's Helm, I think it's called, and you make it 6 inches, that's pretty badass. And then when you look at the fact that he still gives wounds back, end of your movement phase, this model can heal one friendly bubonic Astartes infantry model who is within 3 inches of it. That unit regains up to D3 lost wounds. That's he offers you. He offers you something now that's worth looking at him for his points.
I wonder if they're going to have to FAQ him bringing back bikes or something, or the Death Guard equivalent.
Interestingly, he is just infantry, isn't he?
Yeah, we don't have any bikes, so we're all right.
Bubonic Astartes infantry. But like I say, also remember the rule we talked about right early on at the start of the Codex as well. He arguably, depending on how you build your list, won't even take up an elite slot. Because you can have up to 3 of these types of characters in one slot. So if you have already got a Putrefier and you've already got a Blight Spawn, he doesn't take a slot up. You chuck them in, you get 1 slot for those 3 characters. That's even more mileage for your model then, because cool. you don't then stop using a slot that's potentially for a Hellbrute.
It's good they're using rules like that, like you said about the Lieutenant, but also reminds me, and actually with the upgrades, it reminds me a lot of the Cryptex and the Cryptek Arcana that the Necrons can take, because it's exactly the same thing, right? You do the Royal Call, you bring 1 Cryptek, you get 1. You sound like that advert for that window company that was always on TV. You take 1 Cryptek, you get 1 free. I said you take 1 Cryptek, you get 1 free. It's just like it's just a wonderful bonus. But yeah. The question, another question I want to ask, just on while we're on the elites and we're looking at the Plague Surgeon, is actually going about the Foul Blightspawn. So one of the things the Foul Blightspawn did that was very powerful in his previous ability was his Revolting Stench. So he had this 7-inch basically fight last aura. And obviously they've been looking at adjusting fight last auras.
Putrefying Stink. At the start of your fight phase, you can select one enemy unit within 3 inches of this model.
Right.
That unit is not eligible to fight this phase until after all eligible units from your army have done so.
Cool.
So again, calm down to 3 inches, which is good.
Yeah.
I like it. Things like some of the Death Heads grenades has changed as well. So the Death Heads, Unholy Death Head grenades that you had, 6-inch range. Grenade 2d6, now strength 5, AP -1, 1 damage. Only shoot it once per battle, blast, plague weapon. So
The Flamer
he's
of Doom.
cool, he's still decent. Assault D6, 12-inch flamer. Strength 7, AP -3, flat 2 damage.
Okay, that's not bad. You can take
Automatically
the averages
hits
then.
and plague
Yeah.
weapon.
Okay, and can I ask this because it's a big one? Hellbrutes, because obviously they are a huge indicator of what is to come this edition, and obviously Dreadnoughts got -1 damage. However, I'm going to guess they don't have that unless it stacks. So, what do Hellbrutes get in 9th edition?
Hellbrutes do not get disgustingly resilient, but they do get monstrous resilience. Each time an attack is allocated to this model, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack to a minimum of 1. Now, I would like to think they've done that simply because it aligns with the Heretic Astartes Codex. It makes sense. But I also question why the fuck they put that in there when they could just put disgustingly resilient in the rules. I don't understand why they've done that.
So that is a copy. They have just done a carbon copy there. Bit of a shame.
But I'd imagine that means that they are going to get it in the good news being they'll probably get that same rule for Heretic Astartes and stuff. They'll get that -1 damage like loyalists have got.
Okay,
which is good.
Interesting. And the other big question from my end is demons. Do you get Nurglings? Do you get Plague Bearers? Are they in this book?
I hadn't noticed them, and that's because they don't look like they're in here.
Fair enough. That answers that question. Just because they were in the 8th edition codex and they got taken out because of detachment problems, and so I was curious whether they would find a way to put them back in. But if the answer is no, the answer is no.
And this is something that's a really interesting point actually as well, because in 8th edition I liked the fact that the god-specific demons were in the codex and that they're potentially you could include them in the detachment, but they didn't ever actually allow you to include them in the detachment, so it was a kind of a pointless entry. And as a Chaos player, I really wanted to see more ways in which we can have demons fighting alongside Heretic Astartes, personally. It's narrative, it happens a lot, and we don't have that now. That's been pulled out of this codex, and to do it you're going to have to take 2 separate detachments, and I was kind of a bit irked in 8th edition. It makes sense to get rid of it because it's cleaner and it's tidier, and they were not used anyway, but I'm a little bit sad that they don't exist in those.
Is there any summoning in this book?
I can confirm now, having a very quick skim, there is no rules for demons or summoning at all in the Death Guard Codex, and interestingly, even the Chaos Boon table has been removed from the stratagem section and is now sits only within the Crusade section.
Oh, okay.
So even the Chaos Boon table is gone.
With these rules, they're very interesting. There'll probably be a lot of hype and excitement to get a Death Guard army. So where would you start with painting one? And don't just say Typhus Corrosion.
I'm just actually looking up what's in the Death Guard Combat Patrol, because it looked like a good kit, just in terms of where you start generally. So I mean, that probably is not a bad place. I mean, in that, so you get. Sorry guys, I'm having to look this up live. So don't worry, Liam, you're not the only one we're putting on the spot.
Plague Marines, Poxwalkers, 10 Poxwalkers, some Plague Marines.
Typhus.
Don't worry, I'll do it for you. Typhus.
Yeah, Typhus, and the guy with the injector gun who's got all the grenades on his back that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. Biologus Putrefier, yeah, that is right. Yeah, but yeah, no, I mean the combat patrol in terms of models is a good place to start. I think if you want to build a Death Guard army, but obviously Plague Marines are the core of it. So I mean, in any way you can get yourself some Plague Marines. They're really cool sculpts. I know Alex hates them because they're all grim and grimy.
So much.
But the other thing about them. As somebody who I'm not that good at painting, although I'd like to think my painting has improved. The Death Guard were, like a lot of people in 8th, because we bought the starter sets, they were one of my first armies. The Death Guard are so good to paint, because whatever skill level you are, you can have fun with them, right? Because they are super grotty, right? They're very detailed models, and if you want to go through and pick out all the little details and all the little, like, they have Nurglings hanging off them, the little demon guys, they have, I'm looking at, I've got Typhus next to me, right? And he's got, like, this big cloud of flies on his back, which is sort of made of smoke with lots of individual flies in it. He's got, like, a Nurgling sat on his knee, like, clinging to his chest. You can go through and you can pick all of that stuff out. Or you can go completely the opposite direction and just slap various shades of contrast paint on it. And then, like, yeah, I mean, Rich, you say it like, oh, don't just say Typhus Corrosion. But seriously, throw Typhus Corrosion on, throw Riser Rust on there, make them look dirty and grim and filthy.
Throw
and lots
them in
of
a puddle.
Throw them in the mud. This is all getting a bit BDSM now, but yeah, you can really mess about with them and get lots of dry brushing. They're a really good army to like learn how to paint on, I think, because essentially you can't really cock them up, right? People may disagree with that, but I think with the Death Guard, they're meant to look gross. So if you mess a colour up or stuff pools, right, if it's a contrast paint, nobody cares. It's still going to look good. And as I say, like lots of dry brushing as well is a really good technique to learn on the Death Guard. So yeah, they're a really good one to start with, I think.
So the lack of clean lines is the thing that irks me.
Listen, there's clean lines. Look, there's a clean line sort of around the Nurgling in this sort of diseased pool area here. But yeah, no, they're also actually a really good technique. I mean, the other thing as well, like Typhus Corrosion and Nurgle's Rot, which are two of the technical paints, are really fun to work with, because Nurgle's Rot is basically this kind of goopy green stuff that you can get, and I'm holding up to the camera now for the guys in the podcast. You can sort of see a puddle of it there that I put on Typhus at the bottom, sort of flowing out of his like little tube he's got on his base. And Typhus Corrosion is your like muddy, lumpy, sort of dries, quite gritty one. So you can put that on them as well, just to really bring out the sort of grotty look on them. And one tip I heard the other day, I think actually, to be fair, it was on, we've already mentioned it on Hellstorm Wargaming, was that you can put, if you are using Nurgle's Rot, this is the top tip of the day. If you are using Nurgle's Rot, if you get I think it's Casadora Yellow, which is like the old wash ink sort of orangey yellow paint that GW make that like barely anyone ever uses. If you do a layer of that over Typhus Corrosion, over Nurgle's Rot, it really it makes it look really good, and because the yellowy orange just blends into the sort of like sickly green colour, and it just gives it a lot of depth like really really quickly. So yeah, that's my top tip, but that's somebody's top tip that I've mercilessly pirated. But yeah, they're a really good army to start with, and honestly, if you look at the model and you're intimidated by it because of all the detail, like, don't worry, just throw yourself at it, because you'll do a good job, and there are so many good Death Guard schemes out there you can take inspiration from.
Fantastic. So just generally then, Liam, is there anything from the Codex that you also wanted to mention? So I think I've asked kind of my burning questions. You obviously can't go through every data sheet. Was there anything that really stood out to you from any part of the book?
One of the biggest changes, I think, which Death Guard players will be super happy with, and Heretic Astartes players in general will be happy with, is all the demon engines are now ballistic skill, weapon skill 3+ instead of 4+, which is a major change. You look at the one of the biggest and most popular units Death Guard have ever had, which is the Plague Burst Crawlers. You're now talking a 48-inch heavy D6 blast weapon that's strength 8, AP -2 damage, doesn't need line of sight, and is ballistic skill 3+. That is undeniably powerful in this edition. Doesn't need line of sight, hits on 3, strength 8, AP -2 damage is huge. So I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon. It's still a toughness 8 12-wing model. Blight Haulers have gone up in points quite substantially, which is interesting. But they've obviously got the new melter rule as well, so D6 +2 within half range for their multi-melter. They might see less play. Bloat drones have got better. They've lost a wound, so they don't degrade anymore, which is brilliant. People say, oh, they've lost a wound, but they take -1 damage to everything, and they don't degrade anymore as well. They keep the demon safe.
They can carry that plague as well, I think, is a really significant thing.
Yeah.
There's very few fast units.
So they have contagion.
So being able to get it up there quick.
They have contagion on a unit that's a 10-inch fly. So you can fly 10 inches with it, and you've got that contagion ability as well. So turn 2, 3 onwards, when it becomes a 6-inch range, they are causing -1 toughness. So now your Plague Burst Crawler sat backfield with your drone floated forward can fire out at line of sight with strength 8, and your Knights will be toughness 7 because you're within contagion range of a bloat drone. big deal. That makes a massive change, right? It's huge. And even I think you'll see more flesh mowers because you're going to want to get them forward anyway for contagion range. I think that's how we'll see them played now, as floating stench bombs that fly forward. And the reason why I would look at the flesh mower is because you're talking at the melee profile of 3 attacks or 3 hit rolls instead of 1 for every attack. 4 attacks base, 12 attacks for the flesh mower at strength 7, AP minus 2
That's
damage.
Very good.
Strength 7. And the thing is, also remember, it's a melee weapon, right? So strength 7 sounds good. When you look at the Man Reapers and the size, strength 7 sounds good. And people are forgetting to factor in the fact that they're also at -1 toughness because of contagion range.
Toughness 5 on 2s. Ooh.
So strength 7 is.
Do you know what
massive,
that is? Someone who loves his mortifiers in the Sister Battle Army, which if people don't know, the mortifiers have a very similar ability. You give them the twin plague flails, and they basically dole out 15 strength 6 AP minus 1 damage attacks per model. This is like a souped up version of that. It's like less attacks, but even more deadly. I love it. It's great.
Less attacks, but it hits like a train.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. And what about Cloud of Flies? Actually, out of curiosity.
Cloud of Flies. That was a stratagem for Poxwalkers, right?
Is that a -1 to hit?
It's the one that stops you getting shot. So it's very, very powerful in 9th edition.
As a stratagem named Cloud of Flies, it's disappeared.
Interesting.
It doesn't mean they haven't got something similar, but it's gone currently. That doesn't exist. Oh no, I lied to you. Oh Jesus shit, that's expensive. Cloud of Flies is there. I found it. Use your stratagem when you start your opponent's shooting phase. Select a bubonic Astartes infantry unit. So Astartes infantry unit, not Poxwalkers, from your army until the end of the phase. Each time an enemy model shoots, if that unit is not the closest eligible target or within 12 inches of that model, then that shooting attack is until the shooting is resolved, that model cannot be the target unit. In addition, at the end of the phase, if the selected unit had the bodyguard ability, it loses that ability if the selected unit has the Terminator keyword. Blah. So you can only use it on bubonic Astartes units, which are Plague Marines, the Death Shroud, and the other Terminator's name escapes me right now. If you put it on the Terminators, if it's got the Terminator keyword, it costs 4 command points.
Whoa.
If you put it on normal bubonic Astartes infantry, it costs 2. I'll show you that I'm not lying. 2 and 4
Bloody
command
hell.
points for that stratagem.
I would say one significant buff there, though, is that is in your shooting phase. So before, it was in your what would be now your command phase at the start of your turn. That's a really big buff to that stratagem.
Yeah.
That's why it's gone up so much.
It's the start of your opponent's shooting phase, absolutely.
If you've spent all those points on those, quite frankly, amazing Plague Marine weapons, and you want them to reach combat, you don't have to build your whole army around it. But actually, you can still use it.
While we're on the stratagems, if I may, one question just pops into my head, and this is, I think Ed has covered the ones that everyone actually uses, but this was more just a slightly hilarious, janky combination that people used to use in 8th edition. Is blight bombardment still in there, and is it still 1 CP? So if
Wait, is that the grenade?
Yeah, so people don't know, just to say what Blight Bombardment was a 1 CP strat that basically was before a Death Guard unit shoots or fires Overwatch. When resolving their shots, every model in the unit that is equipped with a Blight Grenade, so all your Astartes carry them, can use their Blight Grenade. And what you used to do was pair that with the Biologist Putrefier. Yes, it's Biologist Putrefier, because he had the ability to basically make their grenades dole out like mortal wounds. So people would do like I think there's a few channels. If you look around on YouTube, you'll see people have done it in battle reports where people do this stupid like mortal wound grenade bomb thing. It was a ridiculous combination, but does that still exist?
And there was other stuff that you could do. You could have 20 Plague Marines that would all have maximum shots of their grenades that were doing mortal wounds and stuff. Yeah, it was disgusting, and you would delete units easily. All of the things you've just mentioned sort of exist, but all of their rules have changed. So the Blightspawn's ability to buff Blight Grenades has changed. Instead of dishing out mortal wounds, they now go to AP -1 and 2 damage. So Blight Grenades are normally strength 4, AP nothing, 1 damage. He now gives them AP -1 and 2 damage. I think that's decent. Again, you're 6 inches for a grenade. You might even be in contagion range, so you're -1 toughness, so your strength 4 is decent. And you've got AP -1. And Blight Bombardment exists. Use this stratagem in your command phase. If a Death Guard Warlord from your army is on the battlefield, select 1 point on the battlefield and place a marker on that point. At the start of your next command phase, roll 1d6 for each unit within 6 inches of the centre of that marker, adding 1 if the unit being rolled for is infantry unit, and subtracting 1 if the unit being rolled for is a character. On a 2 to a 6, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. On a 7+, that unit suffers D6 mortal wounds. The marker is then removed. If your warlord has the Lord of Virulence keyword, the stratagem costs 2 CPs, otherwise it costs 3 CPs, and you can only use this stratagem once.
Interesting, so it's orbital bombardment, basically.
Yeah, I don't know, it says that on a 7+, it's D6 mortal wounds. I don't yet know how you get to the stage where you do 7+ for that.
Did it say you add +1 to the roll if it's infantry? So you roll a 6, and then that gives you your...
Right, okay, yeah. It does, absolutely, yeah. So it's on a 6, infantry will suffer in D6 mortal wounds if they are within range. What's good about it is it's good areas in Isle. You can put that marker on a on an objective, and it doesn't say that it has to be. It select 1 point on the battlefield and place an objective, place a marker. It doesn't say it can't be within 2 inches of an enemy, or so you can dump that. Your opponent's got a castle, sweet. Drop your blight bombardment token right in the middle and make them split up. So it's not bad. It's not bad at all. It's not as good as it was before, I think, with those combinations that you're talking about. Again, quite fluffy though. I quite like it.
Well, the Death Guard are all about the sort of like long range artillery nonsense, right? So it's good.
Brilliant. Wow. Okay. Anything else, Liam, that you wanted to mention?
Loads. There's loads in here, but so I've skimmed a lot of the stratagems, and I'm not going to go through every stratagem with you because we'll be here until tomorrow. But
work is overrated.
There isn't many that there isn't many that are bad. The relics are all semi-decent. The Contagion Discipline is mostly thing we've seen before. It's basically, if you're thinking about it, if you think about this codex, I'd go for it. It's a decent codex. There's lots of flavour. There's lots of character. It's gonna give you lots of narrative flavour that makes the army fun to play, and it's gonna, I think, hold its own. And I say that with a minor caveat that I haven't looked at the points cost of everything. So as long as they are relatively balanced in terms of points, I think you're going to have loads of fun with this army.
I think they're going to be very, very good. I think that points are a thing, but judging by the fact I play Marines at 21, I don't know all of the points, but that as a basis for this book is a hell of a place to start. A Primaris Marine is 20 points, and they don't have the AP, don't have the attacks, but they're -1 damage. They're just, and they've got better weapons. It's just
and T5.
They're going to be incredibly good. No doubt in my mind. I think
I'm excited by it.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
Yeah.
By
Well, like Liam says, we would be here all night if he was allowed to answer every single one of my questions. But unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to wrap up here. So thank you so much for coming on, Liam. Obviously, both our listeners will they're probably listening because they fancy Quipster. So I imagine that they'll have heard a bit. But just in case they haven't, where can people find you?
I don't like giving out my address.
Okay.
Damn.
No, it's seriousness though. So you can search my name, Liam Dempsey, on YouTube, and I've got a YouTube channel there. We also have a website, as we spoke about it for the first sort of half of the podcast, www.deploymentzone.tv. There's loads of hobby content on there, and you get access to a community and a Discord and stuff like that. It's amazing. There's also, Alex will scream at me if I don't say this, you can find Liam Dempsey Official on Instagram. Look at him shaking it like it's all he cares about. Instagram. It's all about Instagram.
You're missing one.
What am I missing? Tell me what I'm missing.
Deployment Zone Instagram.
Oh yeah, cool. That one too.
It's deploymentzone.tv.
Deploymentzone.tv on Instagram.
That's
yeah, absolutely. I can't. This is why we have other people managing our social media, Alex, because I'm really bad at it.
I know, that's why I'm the one doing it.
That does get confusing though.
But yeah, I like genuinely.
Because I was messaging someone on DZTV Instagram thinking I was talking to Alex, and then it turned out I was talking to you, and I was like, I'm so confused. And if I'd known I was talking to you, I would have fangirled.
I do that sometimes.
No. The funniest one was when one of my friends messaged DZTV, and then Liam starts responding, and then I start responding, and it's like one of my female friends who doesn't know anything about Warhammer. She was just like, what
female friends, yeah.
That was weird. I assumed she was just after me. I just assumed that. I
wouldn't blame her.
No.
But no, I genuinely really appreciate it, and I'm quite happy to come and do this again with you sometime
absolutely.
if you want.
Yes, please.
Amazing.
Fantastic to have you. All right, well, let's sign off then as a group. Rich, where can people find you?
They can find me at Reza Prime on Instagram. Yeah, that's it.
Brilliant. Adam, what about you, mate?
Yeah, so I am at ADR Wargaming, all one word, on Instagram, and hopefully coming soon to YouTube.
Mr. Quipster, as well as messaging DZTV, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at QuipsterNerd, and on YouTube as well at Quipster nerd.
Fantastic. And you can all find me at the Sandman Hobby, or you can find us all at the Conclave 40k on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening. If we've learned a couple of things today. Make sure you roll your Death Guard models out in the mud. Make sure you never go on YouTube ever, and make sure you buy a lot of Death Guard models. But thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.